the Bishnois as people who protect trees, who protect chinkaras, often even at the cost of losing their lives, at the cost of fighting with poachers. Bishnois are known as brave people who went up against India's biggest movie star, who was accused of hunting black bucks. But Bishnois are also important in the context of climate change, in the context of a world that's changing. So tell us, let's start with you telling us why the Bishnois are important, their philosophy, why it's important in the context of a warming world.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Delighted to be in Kerala. It's my first time in this city, and when you come here, you realize what a beautiful planet we have to save. So that's terrific as well. It was a great honor to be asked by the Bishnoi to tell their story in the context of a warming world. I'll take you right back to the beginning, to the 15th century, when one of the most astounding figures in world religion happened to walk around the fields of Rajasthan, around the Thar Desert. His name was Guru Jamboji. He's the founder of the Bishnoi religion. And the Bishnoi religion, some say it's a sect of Hinduism, some say it's his own religion. It's the one religion that has nature conservation at its core. That came about at a time of extreme drought. It was a mega drought throughout India, throughout the world. And Jamboji, he'd actually retreated to sit under a tree in a mountain, on a sand dune. He didn't want anything to do with saving the world or people. He just wanted to be with Vishnu. But Vishnu had other ideas for him. Whoosh! Suddenly, he had this way of saving the planet. And his people down below, the camels were starving, the people were chopping down their trees, they were killing their animals to eat them. And Jamboji found out a different way. He brought in 29 rules to live by for your own behavior, but also rules like don't cut trees, let every animal live its total life. And he felt that if we lived in this way, we'd learn to live in harmony with the natural world. We have peace with it. We recognize that we're a part of it. It's a part of us. So some people say that Jamboji was actually the first environmental scientist, but the Bishnoi say this, but at that point, he couldn't speak to the world in terms of science. That language wasn't there. So he spoke in terms of religion and then gave them the practical ways of living, but as a religion. So that's what they say. So when they're out now, they're planting trees and caring for trees as well as caring for animals, they're teaching us that we've never been separated from the natural world. We are the natural world. But it's also, there are great stories I may yet tell you about saving the trees, but I'll move over to you, Neha, now. I'm delighted to have Neha with me as well. We've both written books that we're bringing out here. My Head for a Tree is mine. Here's a gorgeous book from Neha Sinha called Wild Capital. And one of the interesting things for me is what happens when we're no longer living in this rural, wonderful place where nature resets our clock all the time, but we live inside a big city. And here there are fewer bigger cities with more potential industrial problems and pollution than Delhi, which is now Neha's chosen home. And Neha's book, Wild Capital, talks about moving inside the nature of a city. Could you just tell something about that, Neha?
Thank you for that question. You know, when we think about cities, whether it's Chennai or Delhi or Calcutta or Bombay, we talk in terms of degradation. Our first introduction to anybody talking about a city is the pollution, the noise, the chaos, how easy it is to lose yourself, how easy it is to lose something that's of value to you as well. But I was interested in seeing if I could find meaning in the city instead. Because the fact is, most of us live in cities, and most of us will continue to live in cities as the years pass. And there'll probably be more cities that are born. How can we find meaning in our life in a city is a question that perhaps everybody in the urban context thinks of. I found meaning through nature. So the last 10 years I've spent documenting all the nature in Delhi, and it's an astounding amount of nature because we have the Aravalli mountain range, which is one of the world's oldest mountains. We have beautiful ridge forests. We have agricultural fields that surround Delhi. Those fields are full of migratory birds right now that have come from Central Asia and parts of Europe. We have two rivers. We have the Yamuna River, much like London, where you're from. I think the imagination of Delhi, like London, has been shaped by the river the city is situated on. And it's easy to forget about nature when you live in a city because all amenities come to you. You just have to order something and it comes home. But the fact is, there's an ecological history of the city as well. And the fact is, there are hundreds of bird species that live right where we are. In fact, our garbage and our ways of living sometimes create opportunities for birds. And so many times I see migratory eagles from Central Asia in the garbage dumps of Delhi, which is not a happy image, but just to say that the animals are trying to survive just like we are. And there are many parallels in our struggle to find life and meaning. In the city, there are many parallels with the animals as well. So the book is a investigation of whether we can find nature in the city, and I find that we can. And perhaps we need nature in cities much more than any other place because it's good for our mental health and it's good for us to see something other than people in cities. Which takes me to my next question to you, Martin. If I were to become, or you were to become like a Bishnoi, after all your learnings from the Bishnois, after you staying with them for so many days, how would you recommend? What would be the practices we could adopt if we were to become Bishnois?
Okay, I'll do that. Do you mind if I tell the story of Amrita Devi as part of that answer?
Sure.
That for me is, I mean, the Bishnois probably became most famous by taking on the actor Salman Khan, who in 1998 came up to film in Rajasthan and went out at night with night vision goggles and did some shooting, and some wonderful black bucks. These great antelopes were found dead. But what the Bishnois do, they go unarmed against poachers. Against poachers and against armed men. They'll take down horses with their bare hands. They're relentless. So I liked that fighting part of them all, which isn't something that I do. So in a way, the Bishnois are beyond me on that. But what really made me go and look for the Bishnois, first of all, was the tale from 1730, when Amrita Devi, a peasant woman in a Bishnoi village, was at home one day, and the men of the Maharaja came out of the fort in Jodhpur. The Maharaja was building a new palace. He needed lime to build the palace. To get the lime, he needed to burn trees. So the men came out to chop down the kedri forest. You know kedri trees, I think. These glorious trees of the desert that give you shade, that give you food and sustenance for the animals, with 90-meter long roots to survive in the desert. Amrita Devi hugged onto a tree when the men with the axes came. She said, "My head for a tree is a cheap price to pay." That was a striking thing to say, but the men just chopped off her head. Her 3 daughters each came to hold on to a tree. "My head for a tree is a cheap price to pay." They were beheaded. By the end of the session of those days, 363 Bishnois had all come to hold on to trees. They were all beheaded before the Maharaja stopped the massacre, protected the trees and the animals. Now I thought, I mean, would you, hands up, who here would give their life for a tree? Okay, who would give their life for a child that was in danger? A child would be killed, you could stop it. Any hands up for that? Yeah. I thought that. I thought, yeah, I'd do it for a child. I'd probably do it for a whale, because I love whales and they're bigger than me, but a tree. So I actually know these people were right somehow, and they knew more than me. So that's what I did with this book. I went out, I didn't have no story to tell of my own. I went out like you. You went out to the city to find the story of the city, from the bugs to the people to the trees. So I went out to the Bishnois to find that story. And So one of the things I found about that is in my own life, I think, yeah, I'd love to do that. What you're doing is really good. I'd love to do that when I've got time. You know, I'm a really busy person, and I've got my job, I've got to earn money, all of those things. But what I found amongst the Bishnois, I mean, the words from Jamboji is don't wait till you're old. Start when you're young. When you're old, all you'll have is excuses. When you're young, you've got energy. Use it. You've got passion. Use it. That's what I found about the Bishnoi, is that there would be a young teacher. She was training to teach, and that's a big job. But she also loved animals. She got upset when somebody sort of knocked over an animal in the street or dogs attacked one. So she set up an animal rescue center 24/7 in her own front yard. And she learnt to do first aid so she could look after it. And we're going to do readings in a little bit. But I'm going to read you a little bit about another. Shall I do that now and then move on to yours? Yeah.
Let's do that now.
There's a wonderful old man called Rana Ram. Way back in 1962, he went to Mukham. Mukham is a wonderful new temple. Some of the best Indian architecture of the last 20 years has been built by the Bishnois in temple constructions. Mukham's the heartland. About hundreds of thousands of people, about the same as here, really. It's like a festival here. Twice a year, they go to Mukham. And Rana Ram went there in 62, and the man giving a speech said, why are you all here? Forget being here. You're all wasting your time. Go out there and plant trees. So he went to a local nursery, bought a lot of trees, and took them back and planted them in the desert. To plant trees in the desert, you also then have to go and haul water on a camel. On a camel cart and take it there every day and all of that. So he was still doing this when I went there in 2022. So we're talking 60 solid years. And I'll just read you a little bit of the book about him so you get a few of his words as well. Early morning. I feel I got there early. He's already coming back from doing his work. Rana Ram stands and waits near the top of the dune path. He's one of those Bishnoi power voices that I've heard called a voice of lions, and booms questions above my head. Dressed in a white dhoti and singlet, a grey moustache trimmed neatly above his upper lip, a white turban coiled on his head, he's carrying a walking stick and a flat trowel and small scythe. He is a vast man, his chest broad, his arms thick. He is 85 years old. He learns why we have come, relaxes, and is soon cracking jokes. A woman gives birth to 16 children, and I plant 5 trees. But that is harder, because after giving birth, she no longer loses blood. But I bleed every day. He points to the latest cuts and scratches on his arms, and we note the broad spots of blood dried across the singlet. Before he sits cross-legged and accepts our questions, he shows us the view. We're standing on a dune. The panorama is wide, and the view is bucolic. This is desert as transformed by one man's 60 years of planting trees. People tot up that he has planted more than 50,000 trees in this area. Heavy early monsoon rains have helped, casting a green wash over much of the land. But look around and you can understand the concept of a desert forest. For wherever you look, you see trees. They line the ridge of the dune where we are standing, shade the houses of the village, and grow thick around the Hanuman temple in one direction. And way over to the right is the range of dunes that are now home to most of the trees that Rana Ram has planted. The trees are full-crowned, green and healthy and abundant. They don't crowd each other, but fill the landscape and fulfill the definition of a forest, an ecosystem in which trees are the dominant life form. This was an impossibly wide canvas on which to work, one man against mountains of shifting sand, and shows what one person can do, tree by tree. Beautiful, I say. Rana Ram accepts the English word, he smiles, and we settle down on the ground. His hands sweep gestures as he tells his tales. So more stories from him. Who has more rights on this planet? The plants and the animals. They were here long before we humans. Now we've become powerful, and if we refuse to give them their rights, the very least we can do is hold our greed in check so as not to destroy them. His voice stays rich and loud, as though he is used to holding conversations with people standing on distant dunes. While he speaks, birds in the surrounding trees are singing. There's no end to our greed, he adds. But without these plants and animals, we cannot survive. Thorn bushes won't keep a man from destroying the ecology. Fences won't do it. The only thing that can help is awareness. Awareness. That's one of the things I found the Bishnois were saying. Look, we often do, yeah, we do sometimes get unhappy and disappointed, but then someone comes along and they pay attention to us, and then we get spirited again and we can carry on. I suppose that's something what these books are doing. I think, and that's what you're doing in Delhi, isn't it? You're you're finding your own awareness. You're expanding your awareness through meeting other people and through actually stopping for a while and thinking, if I go down here, I see a bug, and here, come up here, I see a leaf. And then with a book, you're trying to share the awareness you've grown. Is that a fair way of looking at it?
So I think my last book was about wild animals in India, all over India. So in the deserts where the Bishnois live, in the mountains near the coastline. And this one, Wild Capital, is about going inwards a little bit to understand how nature can help us in our daily lives, how nature is a kind of backdrop, but also like a pillar in our life. And even though I live in a city where most of the conversation is around the air quality, the fact is we wait for the rains, we wait for nature and nature's work to make our life better. The day that I flew to Calicut is the day that the Himalayas had their first snow. All of winter, this winter, the Himalayas have not had snow. And all the older people in the Himalayas have told me how the snow is so important for their crops and for just for their way of life. And looking at birds and trees in the city, in the heart of the city, in the heart of India's political capital, has also taught me a kind of slowing down, because a tree is only going to fruit when it wants to. It's only going to flower when the time is right. And oftentimes, through stages of personal grief, hospitalization of my father, some illness that I myself had, it is looking at the tree outside the window that has given me a sense of meaning, because everything in nature is so different from our own lives. So, in our lives, we struggle with salaries and Excel sheets and budgets and just the chores we have to do. But you look outside and there's a bird there that's come from Central Asia, and it's hopping on the flowers that you have planted. And I think that's a little bit of a miracle. And I think we need miracles in our daily lives. The book also talks to a lot of extraordinary people who live in Delhi, such as Pradeep Krishan, a well known restoration ecologist who has helped restore many parks in Rajasthan. He has deep knowledge of native plants of India. There's Sunil Harsana, who is a villager who lives on the border of Delhi and Haryana, who has fought his entire life to save a sacred forest in the Aravali mountain range. There's Valerie Sheel, who is a botanist who studies trees in Delhi. And I think learning from these inspiring people has also taught me in my own way of how we can live our lives. So it's always possible to have nature, native nature, natural ecosystems as part of our life. As you said, our lives are not separate, our lives are the same. So let me just read out a little bit about this mahua tree. Okay, so mahua is this iconic tree from central Indian forests. It's found all over hot, dry forests of India, and it produces this flower that tastes of honey. It's a very sweet taste, and everything in the forest loves the mahua. So bears will come to eat it, elephants will come to eat it, and people will come to eat it. And mahua is also used to make a liquor, mahua liquor. So every part, the flour is made into a chutney, it's made into a sabzi, a vegetable, and it's also brewed into a liquor. And this is a passage that describes a grove of mahua trees in Delhi that I found. And there are these huge bats, the flying foxes, that have come to eat the flowers. And everything is happening in the city at the same time. You have people and cars going below, and you have these giant bats coming to feed on the trees above. So it's almost like a multi story with multiple stories happening at the same time. Okay. Something flaps up to the mahua tree in front of us. The wings move slowly, deliberately, liquid in their motion. For a second, it's like watching stingrays doing a ballet in the ocean. Then I notice that the animal has a claw at the peak of each wing. These flying creatures are not birds, they are bats, flying foxes. Their claws are their thumbs, and the fingers wane their wings. The bat lands on the tree, and I imagine it making a thumping sound. I look closer. He's a male. He moves towards a clump of mahua flowers and upside down walk on a tree highway. Then his puppy face goes forward and he eats a flower. He swallows. He really likes what he eats because he immediately goes towards more flowers. He knows that this is a once a year bounty, that the mahua flowers only once every year. As I watch, he pauses and thinks. A car goes on the road below the tree. The bat extends a wing out and pulls it back towards his body. He repeats this in smooth motions. He's feeling hot, and so he begins to fan himself, and the action is nonchalant, like a moving accordion pleat. It's incredibly endearing, like a puppy panting or a bird shaking water out of its face. It's a miracle of evolution that the bat and I like the very same thing, the mahua that tastes of honey and patience.
Thank you very much. Beautiful piece. Staying on trees for a while. Tomorrow is Independence Day, you know that. And on that day, throughout many of the villages throughout India, doctors will be running something called a green medical drive. They get together and volunteer their time to take basic medical attention to villages. They'll also be taking a sapling tree, and they'll get maybe a little child there to help them plant the tree. They'll teach them the watering techniques, and they'll make that child be the guardian of that tree. Then they'll keep going back year after year. The tree will grow bigger than the child. This is all organized by a man called Dr. Anil Bishnoi. I spoke with him. He grew up in a village, then went and found himself in the middle of a city. He's one of these busy guys that runs training programs, runs a training hospital, runs his own hospital. You think, okay, he's too busy to do anything. But as part of that, every medical student is encouraged to plant a tree. And if they can't plant a tree, then take a plant into your house. And then you will actually promise during your 5 years of training to take care of that tree and take photographs of it. And when he was telling me this, first of all, he was saying it doesn't matter whether you plant one tree or 1,000 trees. I thought he was just being nice, but he actually meant that, because what he was creating was tree planters, people that would actually focus on a tree. And he said many people have chopped down a tree, very few people have planted one. He said just find one tree, plant it, and then nurture it so that it grows and grows and grows. I like that idea of creating tree planters and I could be a tree planter. That's one of the things that you can. When I was asking the Bishnois about anxiety amongst the young, because at least in the West, there's a lot of anxiety amongst the young, climate anxiety about the world going to pot. But they didn't feel it because they would look around and find something they could practically do. They asked me about Greta Thunberg, and they said, she's angry all the time. She should find something to do, something to actually practically to take care of. And that's what I like, is that you can't, put your caring. I'm upset, but you've got to do all the caring. You make caring an actual practical thing of taking care for somebody. It could be talking to the old lady who's lonely next door. And rather than thinking, oh, she's just lonely, think, well, actually, so I will talk to her. You notice something, and if it's an issue, you can address it. You've got that in your power. And if we all do that, we have community. That's really what the Bishnoi showed me as much as anything. They showed me the power of community. There was a ring road going. There were big floods when I was there, and we were taking the ring road around Jodhpur. Beautiful new road, great roads in Rajasthan. And suddenly the road stopped. I thought, what happened? I went and met the Bishnoi Tiger Force. Well, they said, well, we stopped the road. I said, how did you do that? Well, 10 of us went to the tent where they were doing it, and we asked them to stop until they'd actually worked out how to avoid chopping down so many trees to build it. I said, 10 people asking construction people to stop $1 billion project doesn't work. I said, well, of course it does. We're Bishnois. And if they don't stop when 10 people ask them, then 100 people ask them, and then 1,000, and then 10,000. So I think you can actually, when you've got community, you can mobilize. Did you find a community spirit even in those urban density of Delhi?
So somebody asked me this in the morning today, that are you like the only person who's caring for the tree looking out? And I have to say, I'm not the only person, because one of the biggest challenges in going out to observe birds or wildlife is security and safety. So it's not always safe to go late in the night, early in the morning to places which can be dangerous. And I feel my life is like an ecosystem of all the important people who have helped me. So just like a tree, a great tree throws shade and other tree lings grow up under the tree, I think we're also dependent on each other. And finding that community that cares is a fundamental act that changes our lives. So, whether it's a community of people like this who love books and care for books and are coming on Sunday to listen to authors talk, whether it's finding a community of bird watchers or people who care about planting trees, finding that community will change anyone's life. And I really wish for everybody to find that tribe. And just like, the Bishnois have so much courage, we might not have that much courage in our daily life, but even small acts of resistance can go such a long way in creating a native habitat, such as just planting native trees and shrubs and vines instead of just planting foreign species that are not supposed to be there, making sure that a tree that's hanging on a wall or drooping on someone's porch is not cut down, making sure we live a life where we are thinking of the non human and not just the human. I think anybody who thinks of the non human or the animal has a richer life. And this takes me to my next question, which is your book begins with what Jamboji said, in which he said, the time to act is now. You're not going to wait till you're an old man to do something. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do, because the planet is warming. And in fact, tell us a little bit about the story of the drought that got Jamboji started on his nature conservation movement, because there was this mega drought and he started talking about environmental conservation. So tell us a bit about that, and then tell us what we can really do a little bit in our own lives to counter what's happening to the world today.
Okay. Yes, I started telling you about that mega drought at the very beginning. What really strikes me about that, Neha, is that it is happening now. The word is called desertification. So the Thar Desert is actually the most populated desert in the world. It's one of the great deserts of the world. It's also one of the most populated. It's populated because the Bishnois have worked out how to live in accord with the land. They're working with the seasons, and they know what the land can produce, what it can sustain. I think one of the things that we can do is actually decrease our demand on things. And when you ask somebody, the question of how much do you earn, the answer you get from the Bishnois is they tell you how much the family earns, because everybody pools resources. There's no competition. One of the things I like about the 29 rules is there are rules like, eat vegetarian food, don't smoke pot, and there are rules about, women should be given a month's very secure on their own after giving birth, things like that. But there are also, when you go to a village, there's people would have contributed funds to have a goat herd there who's actually looking after the male goats, so rather than killing the goats. So that's an actual belief, believing everything's got a right to live. But there are also these rules about human behavior. Don't speak ill of anybody that isn't in the room. And here we are with
That's a good one, yeah.
And here we are with completely divisive politics at the moment. We're sure about ourselves and we're talking against everybody else. But if you don't do that, you don't argue for argument's sake. And I think if we actually stopped sort of thinking the other people are enemies and berating them and just those basic changes in behavior, and just say, well, we are honest in all of our dealings. We will never lie. We will always take the good action. Just taking those basic rules yourself, you'll find that you've changed and your community changes. I asked a major merchant guy. He said, yeah, I do practice honesty. I said, don't you lose business? He said, well, actually, people have changed. They recognize I do it, and then they try and do it themselves. And so I think it's a small thing, but I think if we can all become aware that the climate is changing, the droughts, the fires, they're all results of what we are doing. Can we reduce our energy consumption of fossil fuels? Then if we can, that's making a difference already. So don't think these things are small, because we are all part of a huge race called humanity, and we can take the action. But you ask people, I ask little children, tell me about dying to save a tree. I said, would you die to save a tree? He said, yes, I would. No, because a tree is for everyone, not just for me. But it's also, a tree doesn't have a voice. It doesn't have arms. It doesn't have a mind. It can't write to the newspaper. It can't lobby its president. But we are the aspect of nature that has that intelligence that's actually attuned in to all the people that are destroying things. So we can be active. And that's great. You think, oh, wow, we are part of nature, but we have a special force. No, we can lobby. No, we can we can actually, if we can get sort of 1,000 people to go and see our local MP and tell him we won't vote for you unless you do this green action, then we'll get the action. They're responding to what we asked for. If you say, we're angry for you because we're poor, or we're angry for you because you don't do this, you say, look, we ask this of you because we are the voice of the natural world. So because that's it. You can actually, what can you do? You can become the voice and the arms and the articulacy and the legs and the songs of the natural world, and do the art of the natural world, and write the books of the natural world, and study the laws of the natural world, and enforce the laws of the natural world. Only you can do that. Only we can do that. And that's what we can do, and that's what I think I've learned from the Bishnois. I made that up as I went along, but it sounds right.
I have to ask you, what are the things, the books or the movies that have inspired you? Because you've written many books, many of which have a focus on nature. You've written Client Earth, which was wildly successful. You run a publishing house. And fair to say, you're a nature guy, right? So, when you were growing up, or even now in your life, what are the books or what are the movies that have inspired you and kept you going? Sometimes it's quite grim, isn't it? Because we lose a lot of nature, but we have to keep going.
Yeah, it's quite hard because there aren't that many sort of big movies that reflect that. And writing, I mean, from 100 years ago, if I can go back that far, there's a big writer called D.H. Lawrence who got famous with a sexy book called Lady Chatterley's Lover. But he wrote a book called The Rainbow that as a kid I got passionate about, because in The Rainbow, this woman goes onto this hillside, and the hillside is beautifully described, and there's a full moon there, and she lies on the ground, and she makes love to the moon. That was exciting to me. I thought, wow, this is a good way of interacting with nature, so we can do that, And at the moment, the only films that I really want to go and see are films filmed in the south of France. I'll see any film that's filmed in the south of France with natural world. So really, in the way, as soon as I moved here, stayed into my beautiful Tiara hotel, I walked along the river to the biopark and went to a beautiful biopark and a lovely walk through the trees, and go there in the morning or at dusk. You're surrounded by exotic bird song, and it's thrilling. So I immediately go and engage with that. So and every book I read, I want to read a book that's set out in the natural world. If it's people talking in a house, or about a marriage or something, I'm not interested. So really, every book I look for is like that. So if you want to know about making love to the moon, I'd say The Rainbow. And the most exciting film I've seen recently was an old one. It was Satyajit Ray's The Music Room. I don't know what that is in English, but that was just a glorious, glorious film. And it's ultimately about the art of music and passion and nature and humanity, whilst the whole edifice you built around you is crumbling back to nature. That's a glorious film. Do you have one?
I think I like Robert McFarlane. I like Amitav Ghosh. I feel very privileged that they've loved my book and they liked my book. They're sort of, they've always inspired me. And Amitav Ghosh started writing so many years ago when perhaps I wasn't even reading at that time. but he's still producing such great books, and he uh, blends science with his poetic prose very well, and he creates characters that are so unforgettable. I'm just reminded what you just said about birdsong.
Okay. I have got something to say. The
Yeah.
piece I've taught best about place was one by Paul Bowles called is his introduction to the Sahara. It's wonderful. But one of my favorite reviews of my book compared the writing of this to the writing of Annie Dillard, who is astounding, and Paul Bowles. So my life was almost complete with that. I got that comparison. But they're wonderful, right? Annie Dillard, I think if you don't know her, A Tinker at Pilgrim Creek, that's a really good book. And Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, yeah.
Let me ask a related question to books, since you're a publisher as well. Um, do you what do you think the act of reading does in today's world? And it's a similar question to the act of looking for nature. I think both reading books and looking for nature are things that are not widely mainstream, or are they? I don't know. Uh, what do you think the act of reading does? Why should people be reading books at all?
I think it takes you to worlds that aren't your own and into, but through the viewpoint of people that have been there and thought very hard. You go through as a writer yourself, you've just done it. You go through the whole process of seeing something and then working out the line of communication. I published two beautiful books recently. One is called Nature, My Teacher, by the writer and Zen priest and an environmental lawyer called James Thornton. Just about all the lessons that you can learn from little things in the natural world. It's essays and poetry and photographs. And then Jean McNeil, a book called Latitudes. She's done travels all around the globe, from being dead poor in Canada to becoming a safari guide in Africa and going to the Galapagos and things like that. But she's going around observing how the world is changing through the 50 years of her life. And I think it's just people making you alert, like a great conversation. Like you're all coming here to have conversations and see things. We're going to ask you some questions in a minute, because what I like here about Kerala as well is the questions that come out and the dialogue we get. But that's what we can get from talking to each other, is what you can get from finding a like mind in a quiet space in a wonderful book. And they've taken a lot of time to share, to actually refine what they know and share it. So just reading can take you into that great world of broadening your horizons and it's community as well. When you read a book, you're communing with somebody and you're actually creating as much as the writer did. They don't know what that magic is going to happen in your head when they wrote that book, but it happens. That's when a book comes alive. Until it's being read, it's not really alive. You make it so. The reader is dynamic. They take part in the book. They inhabit it. They walk its streets. They talk with its people. They argue with it. They might throw it in the corner, but they respond to it. And that's part of the reading journey. It's a huge adventure.
Speaking of adventure, I met this villager in Delhi called Sunil Harsana, a man I write about in Wild Capital. And he talks about finding the animal in ourselves in a good way.
What's your animal?
I mean, we were trying to climb this slope, which is part of the Aravali Mountains. I had just recovered from COVID. There were a few more people with us. Some people didn't have the right shoes. Everybody wanted to get out because we'd all been locked down because of COVID. And so we were going out and we weren't able to climb. We weren't able to come down in the way that he does it. He walks with a limp, but he walks better than any of us. And he's like, "What are you doing? Be a monkey. Find the monkey in yourself. Be a monkey and, go down the slope and then climb up." And I'm like, you're right. Because we often speak of being human in a very supremacist way, that, we are smarter, we are better than everything else. But we also forget that there's a kind of simplicity and a kind of beauty in the way animals live their lives, in which they're just very straightforward. And like Jumboji said, don't talk ill about someone who's not in the room. Now, animals don't talk, but I assume if they did, they wouldn't be bitching about other people, because there's something very straightforward and something very true about the animal life. And finding animals in us, whether it is singing for joy in the way that birds do, whether it's climbing like a monkey, in which you just find abandon and you find a confidence in yourself. As people, we often overthink so much. We often feel bad about something that hasn't even happened. And I think I learned from the animal world how to live a life in the moment, in the present moment, and also just to observe things around me without the filter of a screen, without the filter of overthinking. So, my next question to you is that you stayed with the Bishnois, and it must have been a fascinating experience. You met people of all ages. One Bishnoi has actually written the foreword for your book, which is wonderful. Tell us a bit about life in the village. Just take us through one day in the life of a Bishnoi in the village.
Well, a day starts with a sacred ceremony. One of the first things you must do is wash. You must wash before you eat or do anything else. And then you might sort of take care of your animals and then you feed. But you also then do the yajna ceremony, which is a ceremony of you're really honoring flame, you're pouring ghee onto flame while you're reciting the words of Jamboji. So there's that sacred amount to the day, first of all. It's interesting that even in the desert, that taking care of the human, not just the nature of washing yourself, is one of the most important things to do. And then it depends where you are in the village, but if you've got the cattle, you'll be taking the cattle out and doing those. What's interesting for me, it's interesting probably about India, is that wherever you go and there's work being done, the women are the ones that are doing it. And they're brightly colored clothes, the Bishnoi women, beautifully colored clothes. The men are all dressed completely in white, with no white clothes, white turbans. The women in gorgeous colors with wonderful gold ornaments. And but they're out there hoeing the fields, they're collecting the millet, they're milling it, they're making the meals, and they come at when you're doing the ceremonies and the temples, which they do at the evening as well, and chanting the name of Vishnu. They the women kind of ghost in for a few minutes and then go out again because they got to take care of the children and tell the stories and make the meals and do the washing, and so it's a huge and the men. I'm sure they work sometimes. But,
That's nice.
but they're the ones that actually manage to take the time to talk things through and to perform the whole ceremony and to do the ownerships, things like that. And so it was really that power of the women was the most interesting thing for me in the village, because they weren't necessarily the ones I was getting to meet all the time, but they were actually too busy to meet me. They've got things to do. But I'd like to turn around now if we can and just see if you've got any questions.
Yeah, we're going to do audience questions now. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. Yeah, I see.
Hello.
Hello.
So it's about global warming and climate change. So I recently came across an argument made by an organization with a huge platform. Actually, they sort of separated personal responsibility from responsibility of governments and big institutions, and they had the argument that multinational corporations and governments, they are doing a hugely larger, let's say, a percentage of damage to the climate and the planet compared to an individual person, so that an individual person should not be as concerned about nature and global warming as let's say a multinational corporation should be. And they were sort of advocating for the idea that if you want to, let's say, drink juice out of a plastic straw, go for it, because a single plastic straw is not going to change anything. What is your response to that argument?
I don't agree with that, first of all, because even if you save one animal's life, it makes a difference to that animal. Let me use that analogy a bit further. So, if I reduce my plastic use, plastic bag use, or any plastic, hard plastic, I'm potentially saving the lives of fish, birds, many other animals, part of the food chain that are consuming that plastic. There are plastics inside our bodies. There are plastic inside the bodies of the largest animal on earth, which is the blue whale as well as the elephant. And so, if I make that change in my life while I wait for structural change, if I make that change in my life, I'm potentially saving the lives of so many creatures. So, while we need structural change, always for any issue, we need personal change as well.
On February the 2nd in Bikaner in Rajasthan, there's going to be a mass continued protest by the Bishnois against energy companies. So they're taking on big corporations. What they're doing is going into the desert, illegally chopping down the big kedgeree trees. I went to experience this. It's the one place I actually found, all right, I probably could die to save these trees in this situation. And they're chopping down the kedgeree trees. They're actually burying them in trenches to get rid of the evidence so they can put down solar panels, solar fields. Solar fields, good. That's a good renewable energy. But you can arrange the solar fields, they're doing them elsewhere in Bikana, and not chop down the trees. It's careless, it's money saving, you're not thinking about the planet at all, you're just thinking ultimately about profit. So there's this huge protest there about that. Similarly, ultimately the Dana Corporation and the Rajasthani Corporation are chopping down the wonderful forests, the Hasdeo forest in Chandigarh state. And it's the tribal women that even now are going and hugging the trees. The Bishnois are, as lawyers, are working to save them. But you also have to work at that agency as well. You have to know that there are these forces that are destroying the planet that we can also mobilize against. I'm almost now, in America, I'm almost sort of yearning for the era of greenwashing when people actually at least pretended to do good. They're not even doing that anymore. And we want to actually say, look, the power of our purchasing is huge. Say, we won't buy it if you do that. We will boycott you. So no, have a boycott, publicize your boycott, put it in your local newspaper, have somebody else sort of take that. The Bishnois actually do no action without also issuing a press release. And there was a wonderful guy I met called Radeshiam, who sadly is one of these Bishnois that since I met him, one of the most luminous young people I've ever met, who was out there saving the great Indian bustard in the Thar Desert. And he generated loads of headlines. He would climb up a pylon with electric wires because the great Indian bustards kept flying into these ones electrocuting. And he would jump unless they put reflectors on these things to save the things. That's taking direct action to preserve that thing, but against an energy company. And that it worked because the headlines would happen because of it. So everybody here can become a headline. And the headlines, then people take notice. That's the media attention. Nobody wants that. These companies have huge PR companies telling stories about themselves that are glorious, but you can tell small stories, and people want those active stories of angry rebellion as well. So yeah, at the personal level, there's always something you can do. You can tell a story, like I say. And if you can tell a story and amplify your story, that story can affect the corporation. And okay, not all corporations with one, but everybody can do something like that. Just feel enabled and empowered and not lost. So don't separate. What I don't like about that story that you said is separation. You know, and there are these forces doing this, and we're doing that, and they're the twain. Separations where it's all gone wrong. We're all in it together. Those corporations as well. Many of the people that lead that corporation are decent people, perhaps, with families that they're asking them, why don't you do something? Why are you being bad all the time? Well, I've got to make money, you know? So you can get them on side as well.
We have to move on to the next question. Just to add to that, it's a myth that everything can be restored. Everything can't be restored. Look at the Ganga River or the Yamuna River, they're so dirty. So if we have a good thing, let's not destroy it, thinking it can be restored 100 years later. Yes, please.
My question is related to the same question he asked. The over-urbanization of the hilly areas is really a challenge for the climate change. And I would like to remember Professor Madhav Gadgil in this occasion, who has passed away.
Professor Madhav Gadgil was a great environmentalist who recently passed away, is who he's talking about. The question is over urbanization and climate change and the nexus between the two. Shall we take two more questions and then answer them at the end? Yeah. Was there another question? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Atatul Mati Nasser and I'm 14 years old. I wanted to ask you about an issue that's happening in my school because usually when there's competitions and we are asked to talk about climate change and global warming, people usually take bland explanations with no note of urgency in them. And I was thinking that this is not only about saving the planet, it's about saving us, saving the creatures around us. The ice is thinning every year in the polar regions, and many animals are getting lost to this issue. And I think that when my friends explain this issue, or when we are conducting rallies in our school, the urgency and the detail is not correctly procured or is not correctly explained on these such issues. So I wanted to ask, how can we tell people how urgent and how much more detail and how much depth and how much damage this issue could cause to humanity and the larger ecosystem around us? Because the youth is first emerging in these schools, and we cannot spread these ideas to the youth. What about our future generations? As Greta Thunberg said in one of her lectures, that we are the first generation to experience climate change and the last generation which can do something about it. So I wanted to get your opinion on this and how we can stop this larger ranging issue.
Well, first of all, well done. No, you are the ones that are sort of telling us what to do as well, and recognizing that urgency. It is urgent. Species will be going extinct today, and species are actually being reduced. And so the birds that you're seeing now are just minimal amount of what would have been there on the day you were born. So it is an urgent issue, and so just staying calm doesn't work, and just helping the things sort of near you. I agree with you. That doesn't work. There are positive trends, and I think you've got to look to where the positive trends are. I've spoken a little bit in the previous session about what's happening in China at the moment. But if you can actually take a look at China, you'll see that there's a story there that's actually dealing with the urgency. They're trying to build, as a society-wise, built into their constitution, is something they're calling an ecological civilization. So we're coming out of industrial civilization. They're changing the ways of finance structures and the ways of farming and the ways of medicine and the ways of banking, changing everything to build a sustainable world, because they're recognizing what you say, we're building for the future. So mostly within this political system, they've got a very short-term cycle, 4 years to the next thing. They're looking forward 2,000 years. But the remarkable thing is that their economy is then hinged that way as well. And that's the economy in the world that is booming. They're becoming the superpower. They're becoming actually the voices to link to. And what they actually want as well with their Belt and Road thing is other countries to come to them, to watch what they're doing and come to them and ask for their support. And then they will teach you how to do it. So they are the model. Honestly now, China is the model of how to save the planet. That's a huge thing. That's beyond corporations. They're controlling the corporations. They're controlling many things. And they want countries like India, like Pakistan, like Bangladesh, to come and say, could you help us do this? They respond. They don't come and tell you what they're doing. They respond to your requests. So that's my big point picture, to find hope at the moment. Where I really find hope, I find it in individuals, I find it in the Bishnoi, and I find it in big picture story in the Chinese government and what they're doing.
Thank you. Regarding urbanization and climate change, so the only solution that will work long term are what we call nature-based solutions, in which we are looking for adaptation for climate change and resilience against climate change by using nature-based things such as creating mangroves for buffering against storms and cyclones, creating wetlands, growing forests to absorb the worst shocks of too much rain, of too much heat, and of just variable temperature. So, the way that we build our cities going forward will need to depend on nature and native ecosystems to help us. So, in your city, your native vegetation should be planted. We need to have drainage and understand the hydrological map of the city and stop building over canals and rivers. And I think the Chennai floods also showed us how dangerous it is to build over hydrological structures. And yeah, anything sustainable has to be nature based. We have time for one more question. And if we've left out any, you can talk to us at the signing. It's going to be right here. Yeah, go ahead.
I would actually like to get both of your perspectives on this. As my question is, we are all doing our best to revive the nature. We are teaching our next generation to be something that contributes into the nature. But then there is this near future where the entire world is getting ready for defense and war and warfare. So when all this is being done from our side and this is on the other side, what is your perspective? Is it all going to go and drain when we are doing our best to do what it takes to build the earth back
I was really struck with that, with the Bishnoi. And I'd like to give you a really hopeful thing. But then talking to them, I heard them say that they feel a world war is inevitable. And they feel that it'll be a world war over resources. And I can see that. No, there is sort of mass emigration because of climate change. There will be upheavals in the world beyond what we know. But they felt they were educating their children to be the leaders in that war. And I think by that, I don't think they meant, no, we know how to man the gunships and do this and do this. No, just sort of moral leadership and what we're fighting for and do that. But they're actually, from their villages, they're preparing for a world war. So I can't wish it away from you. I mean, trying to give you the Bishnoi story, that's what they're doing. They're saying we're educating our children to be the leaders in the coming world war.
I also have to add to that that doing all these things that you're talking about, which is protecting nature, teaching children, it also does something for yourself, right? It adds to your soul. And I think that's very important too. We do things regardless of the outcome sometimes because that's important for us. As someone once said, what we stand for is what we stand on, meaning we stand on our beliefs. And I think it's important to nurture something that's important for you. So, if saving nature is important for you, you must continue regardless of the wars. And I think there are always going to be wars in the world because we are a very problematic species. So, please carry on. Thank you so much to everybody for sitting here, being with us. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be in Kerala and to be meeting you all. So I really appreciate it. And the invitation from the Kerala Literature Festival, which is it's a wonderful festival, KLF, isn't it?
It's really something. It's my first time. It's really something. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Neha.